Hi, my name is Jeremy Walsh, and today I'm going to be talking about developmental disabilities. First thing I want to talk about is what are developmental disabilities? So, developmental disabilities are defined as a group of conditions due to impairment in physical, learning, or behavioral areas, and they typically begin during the developmental period. Mental disorders can be broken down into three categories: physical, sensory motor, and socio emotional. The first example of a physical would be fetal alcohol syndrome, a sensory motor would be cerebral palsy, and socio emotional would be ADHD or social anxiety. This chart here does a really good job of breaking down the main causes of developmental disabilities, such as genetic factors, parental illness and issues, childhood illness and injuries, and environmental factors. As you can see, they're caused by a wide variety of things. One of the more common developmental disorders that teachers will interact with in the classroom is autism developmental disorder. Autism spectrum disorder, or ASD, is a developmental disorder that affects communication behavior. It can be diagnosed in early age, but it is still a developmental disorder. The next disease that I'd like to highlight that is considered a developmental disorder is cerebral palsy. This is a condition marked by impaired muscle coordination, spastic paralysis, and/or other disabilities, typically caused by damage to the brain before birth. The last developmental disability I'd like to highlight is Down syndrome. Down syndrome is a genetic disorder caused when abnormal cell division results in extra, full, or partial copy of chromosome 21. This extra genetic material causes the developmental changes and physical features of Down syndrome. Now that we have an understanding of what developmental disabilities are and a few examples, I'd like to talk about how do we teach individuals that have these afflictions. And I think the first step is having a growth mindset. You don't know everything. It's going to be a learning process, but you have to try. When discussing how developmental disabilities can impact learning, it's important to remember that developmental disabilities are severe long-term problems. They may be physical, such as blindness. It may affect mental health, such as learning disabilities. Or the problem could be both mental and physical, such as Down syndrome. When discussing this topic, it's important to understand the concept of developmental delay versus developmental disability. They're not the same. Kids can outgrow or catch up from developmental delays. Developmental disabilities are lifelong, but it is possible to make progress. Ableism is described as discrimination and social prejudice against people with disabilities and people who have been perceived to be disabled. So, ableism is just basically discrimination in favor of able-bodied people. Some tips to avoid ableism in the classroom would be it's really quite simple. You need to bring disabled people to the table. To quote Hamilton, they need to be in the room where it happened, especially when it concerns them. They are a voice that is rarely heard from, and this is something that we have to rectify. Some strategies that I can adopt as a future educator to help my special needs students would be to limit the amount of text on my slides, provide clear and concise directions, and always be there if my students want to talk to me. That last one is especially important. One thing that I can do as a future high school history teacher would be to provide my students with a detailed calendar that has when assignments and tests are so that they can plan according to that. Also, I think just being open communication-wise is very important to student success. So slide 15 has several support techniques you could use. They're all valid, but my main takeaway from this slide was the importance of building a community of trust within the classroom, because if you don't have that, then you're not going to be successful regardless of the student. Regardless of what class you're teaching, grade level, some tips to success when dealing with special education students are you need to keep your classroom organized. Remember that each child is an individual. Give students opportunities to succeed. Also, create a support network and ultimately just keep things simple. You need to make sure to treat your special education students the same as you do your regular students because at the end of the day, their disability isn't a weakness, they just need a little bit of additional help. People with intellectual and developmental disabilities often want to be more independent, but their disability holds them back from this. Now, with the aid of assistive technology, their dreams can finally be achieved. Some examples of assistive technology could be audio players, recorders, timers, calculators, or something as simple as a speech to text tool. It's really anything that provides the special needs student with that edge that they need to get ahead. Thank you for listening today. I hope you learned something. It was definitely very fun to research. And thank you. Have a nice day. Also, if anyone was curious, these are my sources. If you want to learn a little bit more or just go ahead and dive on in, be my guest.